sister of the evening starlight, in the falling shadows stay, here among us till the far light of tomorrow's dawning ray. Of the Señor's steady mercy, Lady of the turning day. Mother of the generations, in whose love a life is worth, everlasting celebrations bring our labor safe to birth. Of the Señor's steady mercy, Lady of the turning earth.
Welcome to the sanctuary of Neshoba Unitarian Universalist Church. I am Sarah Osborne, the Director of Religious Exploration, and I am also the Intern Minister for Beloved Conversations at the FOS Collaborative in Chicago. I am delighted that you are able to join me this morning for this online service. It is good to be together in spirit. And now let us enter into a time of worship. Come with your joy, with your incurable curiosity, your hunger for hope, but to bring your broken heart, your cracked confidence, your ruptured relationship. Let this today be a place of repair. May the words spoken become webbing, weaving across a path back to wisdom, back to forgotten worth, back to a place of peace. Now buried by all the striving and the worrying and wounds, may the sounds circling in this space sweep you up like a stream whose currents long to carry you home. And may the current breath so sweetly shared between you and me remind us that loneliness eventually lifts, that we are tethered more tightly than it sometimes seems, that together our hearts can mend and our world can be woven anew. Come, let us begin.
Under the right circumstances, playing with fire is a delight. Imagine being gathered around a fire pit as the crackling flames invite us to sing, dance, and roast a marshmallow or two. Our chalice also invites us to play, although with ideas rather than with marshmallows. The flame encourages us to explore who we are, who our neighbors are, and where we are on our spiritual journey. Today, we light this chalice in the spirit of play. Let us trust the light to guide us in this hour and in the days to come, finding joy and love along the way. Please join me in reciting the words of our affirmation of covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall go into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God.
Today I'm going to be reading I Love You Stinky Face, written by Lisa McCourt and illustrated by Cyd Moore. I love you, my wonderful child, said Mama as she tucked me in. But I had a question. Mama, what if I were a big scary ape? Would you still love me then? If you were a big scary ape, I would comb your whole hairy self just to make sure you didn't have any tangles. And I would make your birthday cake out of bananas, and I would tell you, I love you, my big scary ape. But mama, what if I were a super smelly skunk and I smelled so bad that my name was Stinky Face? Then I would give you a bath and sprinkle you with sweet smelling powder. And if you still smelled bad, I wouldn't mind. And I would hug you so tight and whisper in your ear, I love you, Stinky Face. But mama, what if I were an alligator with big sharp teeth that could bite your head off? Then I would buy you a bigger toothbrush for your big teeth and make sure that you brush them every day so that they would stay healthy and strong. And if you had a sore throat, I would stick my head right inside your enormous jaws to make sure you were okay. And I would say, I love you, my ferocious alligator. But mama, what if I were a terrible meat-eating dinosaur with razor-sharp claws that ripped my sheets to shred every night while I slept? Then I would give you plenty of meat to eat, if that's what you liked, and I would sew your sheets back together every day, because after all, ripping them would be an accident. And I would tuck you in your newly mended sheets every night and say, I love you, my sweet, terrible dinosaur. But mama, what if I were a swamp creature with slimy smelling seaweed hanging from my body, and I couldn't ever leave the swamp or I would die? Then I would build a house right next to the swamp, and I would stay with you and take care of you always. And when you splashed to the surface, I would say, I love you, my slimy little swamp monster. But mama, what if I were a green alien from Mars and I ate bugs instead of peanut butter? Then I would dress you in colors that showed off your nice green skin, and I would pack your lunchbox with beetles and spiders and ants and grasshoppers and the tastiest bugs you ever had. And I would pack a note with all the bugs that said, I love you, little greenie. Bon appetit. But mama, what if I were a cyclops and I had just one big gigantic eye in the middle of my head? Then I would look right into your giant eye and say, I love you, my little cyclops. And I would sing you a lullaby until your one gigantic eyelid got droopier and droopier and finally closed and you fell asleep. I love you, mama. And I love you, my wonderful child. The end.
The Dalai Lama once said, generosity is the most natural outward expression of an inner attitude of compassion and loving kindness. If you would like to contribute to our offering this morning, now is your opportunity to do so. The offering for the care and sustenance of this congregation and its work will now be graciously given and received. Please give as you are able, utilizing the methods on the following graphic. We thank you for your expression of generosity and loving kindness. Our reading this morning comes to us from John Pavlovitz from his book called If God is Love, Don't Be a Jerk, Finding Faith That Makes Us Better Humans. This is chapter 2, Scary Bedtime Stories. One of the initial and primary dilemmas we face when signing on to belief in a divine presence on any level is deciding the character and agenda of that presence. Is it fundamentally for me or against me? Am I safe in its company, or is my punishment imminent? Am I beloved by it as I am, or is its affection for me contingent upon my behavior or my belief? The answer to those questions are usually passed down to us before we can ever remember receiving them, which is why they're so hard to see objectively. Growing up as a good little Catholic boy, I can remember inhaling the pungent incense hanging in the air of our massive Gothic sanctuary, kneeling into a soft red velvet pew pad, resting my elbows on the hard, polished wooden seat in front of me, and staring up into the carnivorous stone and stained glass canopy, praying to a God who spoke light and shape into being and numbered the very hairs on my head, a God who fully adored me but whose anger was never far away. I knew that I was loved completely as long as I didn't screw up in the infinite number of ways it seemed possible to do. Stealing, lying, masturbating, listening to Ozzy Osborne, or one day voting Democrat. As a result, I often prayed, "Whom shall I fear?" while being rightly terrified. I was taught that God was both steadfast in love and easily angered, and no adult around me seemed fazed in the slightest by that paradox. And regardless of my confusion, I was told to share this God with others, to make sure friends and relatives and classmates and strangers openly accepted his limitless love, so that he didn't pulverize them or put a pox on their houses, whatever that was. I needed to rescue people from eternal torment before God came again to judge me and all of mankind. A tall order for a first grader. Nearly half a century later, I'm still carrying the remnants of these ancient relics around with me. As an adult, have you ever really thought about the conclusions you hold about those elemental questions, about the character of God and how you acquired them? How you would specifically describe whoever or whatever you believe holds everything together? What this God thinks of you and wants for and from you? You probably should. Your ability to be loving to yourself and your neighbors is in many ways a product of these conclusions. They make up the whats and whys of your spirituality. Whether we derive the answers from a sacred text, from life experience, from our community, from religious tradition, or from some entirely unique recipe of each of these answers dictate our sense of identity and self-love, orient us in the world, and give us purpose. They provide a filter for understanding suffering and favorable circumstances. Are we being cursed, tested, or blessed? And they also determine how we wield our religion as we encounter other people. These answers form the working theology of our ordinary lives. One set of answers will yield a hopeful, compassionate benevolence that continually moves us to welcome others in and to live with an open-handed generosity. And other is likely to construct a scalding, brimstone-laden judgmentalism that leaves us predisposed to exclude and prone to finger-waggling. We all surely reside somewhere well between these two opposite poles. Punitive religion, the kind many of us have been raised in and likely live in close proximity to, often preaches a conditional good news, bad news gospel, where things seem promising presently, but The massive cosmic shoe is perpetually about to drop. Yes, God loves us unquestionably and effusively, we are told. But there are caveats and conditions under which we earn and keep that love. Prerequisites for belonging among God and God's people. The moral scores that need to be settled in order to be fully welcomed. It may be helpful to leave behind those scary stories of our childhoods because they make for terrifying adults. And terrified adults, historically, do not love very well. When we connect with our bodies to center and ground ourselves in this moment, there is an opportunity to know peace, to find healing, and our sense of touch is so important. When we tap our fingers or touch our face or wrap ourselves in a hug, we give ourselves the opportunity to bring our awareness to the present and to let go of worries and just be. I invite you to join me in an embodied practice, to slow down, to fully be present in this moment, to center ourselves with love. This is a simple practice that you can employ anytime and anywhere. And I like to say the following mantra: I am here now. And you can do this as an embodied practice with some finger tapping. I am here now. Will you try this with me? I am here now. Well, maybe that doesn't work for you finger tapping, but maybe you would prefer to touch your face. Can you try this mantra with me? I am here now. Or maybe you just need a really good hug to center yourself in this moment. Give yourself some love. I am here now. I am here now. Our story this morning, I Love You Stinky Face, is one of my children's favorite books from when they were little. They would ask me to read it again and again, and they delighted when I came up with different voices for the various creatures. The kids would giggle and smile, and they would reach for the book with their little toddler hands to pause and look more closely at the pictures. And the pages are now forever creased and smudged from those eager toddler fingers. At the end of each reading, I would always turn to my children and look at them in the eye and say, I love you, Stinky Face. And they knew what this meant. You may be wondering why a children's book should inspire such analysis in a worship service, but there is truth to be uncovered in the innocence of this youthful story. And there's a playfulness in the concern, which approaches one of life's biggest questions. Are we worthy? In the story, the child is anxious before going to bed. Like many of us, our anxieties swirl in the evening and we worry about small things like, did I set my alarm? And big things like, where do I belong? The child in this story has a fear that they might not be lovable. Not only do they worry about not being lovable, I believe they worry about whether every part of them is worthy of love. The child is asking about unconditional love. The child fears that they might lose or never earn their parents' love if they are different. Fear is a strong motivator. So many of us respond to this worry in our lives by putting on a smile and acting in a way that is deemed acceptable to society. not being true to ourselves, or at the very least, feeling shame for who we might be if we were truthful. In our story, the child gives the mother fantastical creatures and scenarios to test her love. I wonder if the child is asking the mother if they could love their shadow side. According to John Sanford, the term shadow as a psychological concept refers to the dark, feared, unwanted side of our personality. But the shadow isn't bad. It's a part of us that helps us to survive and makes us uniquely us. A healthy person does embrace and finds balance with their shadow. Even Peter Pan, who loses his shadow and needs Wendy Darling's help sewing it back on, says, "After all, one can't leave his shadow lying about and not miss it sooner or later. Don't you agree?" He knows that one cannot live without their shadow. We tend to stick to the bright and fluffy thoughts, love and light, all the while stuffing down pain and uncertainty. And we know this never works in the long run. We are who we are. A friend of mine one time told me that when we fear or we have judgments about another person, we should look to see what about them resonates in our own personalities. The thing that bothers you about them might be the same thing that exists within you in some way. This same friend told me once that this applies to animals and creatures we fear. That if you look at the characteristics of a loathed animal, you might glean a piece of wisdom about your shadow self. For me, this would be the big, razor-toothed, great white shark. When I was a child, I was equal parts scared of and obsessed with them. I made my mother buy me books about sharks, and I watched TV programs and movies on the subject. When my friend asked me about my fear of sharks and how that might represent something of my shadow, I was stunned. In fact, I could see that sharks are fast-moving, always going, determined, curious, large, big-mouthed, and they strike and they leap out of the water. There is some resonance there for my shadow. But knowing these attributes are the ones that sometimes I exhibit makes it easier for me to embrace them. It makes it easier to embrace the shark, my inner shark. I look at my shadow with curiosity rather than fear. And this helps me to balance out the parts of myself, providing some humility with my assertiveness or sharkiness. In our story this morning, the child uses their great imagination to reveal their shadow worries to their mother. And no matter which fantastical creature or monster the child can dream up, the mother always quickly affirms her love for them. In this affirmation, she lets her child know that they are worthy, no exceptions. This makes me think of the universalist part of our theology, that love is afforded to each and every person. If some of us recognize a divine presence or God, then they are a loving one, no exception. This is the beauty of our theology. If the divine is the thing that is bigger than us, that they can hold all the good and ugly bits of us in love, this is what I believe. In ancient times, God was needed to create order out of chaos and to be that punishing and exacting God because people struggled to survive in a harsh world. And as we've changed in our world, so too does God. Thinking about our reading from John Pavlovitz as he struggled to form a better relationship to the holy, my answer to him would be yes. The God we need now is one of love. Every one of us needs more love. Our Unitarian Universalist faith calls us to be like the mother in I Love You Stinky Face. She loves without judgment, without condition. And not only does she express her love in words, but she declares the actions that prove that love. Each scenario that the child presents, the mother loves them. She meets them where they are. She's willing to brush a gorilla's hair and buy them bananas, and she would bathe and hug her stinky skunk. She would brush her alligator's teeth and make sure they were well, and she would sew and re-sew the dinosaur sheets and fix them a bunch of burgers. She would move to the swamps, and she would pack a lunchbox full of bugs for the alien. She would look lovingly into her cyclops eye and sing them sweetly to sleep. What do we have to lose by loving more? What would this love look like if we extended it to others, especially to those who are different than ourselves? And how would we feel if it was extended to us? More love, this is our mission. Our path is guided by curiosity, reflection, and openness. If the mother can love the entire child, then we can love all the bits of ourselves and others. Let this story be a reminder to you to embrace your whole and holy self. Reclaim the things about yourself that others have tried to squelch in you. Revel in the bits that others tried to shame you for because of their own suppressed misery. Own your story with kindness to yourself and to others. Now, I know that this message is aspirational. We are complex humans and we will make mistakes. We will fail, and we must find accountability with grace and beauty. And we must be willing to expand ourselves to a growing and changing world. But isn't it worth it to work towards this goal that is not yet fully realized? I Love You Stinky Face is a story of love and acceptance. I think about all of the creatures in the story, the gorilla, the cyclops, the alien, the alligator, beings that are feared and reviled. And I think about how many of us love to play dress up for costume parties or Halloween. Perhaps the costumes and the masks we wear are really revealing more about our true selves. It's a chance to be free. Bob Dylan once said, when somebody's wearing a mask, he's gonna tell you the truth. And when he's not wearing a mask, it's highly unlikely. This seems like a contradiction to what we generally believe about truth-telling. Perhaps the persona we create or the masks we wear are like a safety net or a security blanket. Wouldn't it be grand if we didn't have to wear these to be our true selves? In our modern US American culture today, there is a standard form of beauty learning, and being in the world that keeps many of us locked up and miserable. There is a harmful expectation that we are striving towards, and it is not attainable. There is a sense of perfectionism to be the right kind of human, to fit the standard of expectation, which produces guilt and shame. And if we don't fit the mold, we are less than. Imagine if we could just let all of that go. Can you remember a time with curiosity where you felt like you belonged? Maybe a time like this encounter of the child with their mother in this story. Can you name a time of transcendence where you were connected with the awe and wonder of the universe, and you knew that you were a part of the beautiful story unfolding? Can you imagine a world where judgments were granted to just let you be free? This is a time of reclaiming all of who we are and a celebration of the diversity of culture and experiences and bodies of ourselves and others. It is a reclaiming of the pieces of you that society might find undesirable or different. It is a time of reclaiming of words and ideas that have been used against you to other you. This is a time for truth-telling. This is a time for all of us to say, let me listen how you want to be learned and loved. You know, Lady Gaga developed a strong fan base for her music and her artistic message of acceptance, especially after she released her song, Born This Way. It was a rallying cry for the marginalized and oppressed, particularly the LGBTQ community. Gaga started lovingly referring to her fan base as little monsters because of their high screaming energy response to her, the diversity of their cultural makeup, and as an homage to her first album titled The Fame Monster. And the fans loved the nickname Gaga gave them. It created a sense of belonging and love. And they even have a symbol, a hand gesture, the paws up of the monster claw. Lady Gaga recognized the impact her music and the culture of the Little Monsters was having for not only her fan base, but for the people around the whole world. And Gaga started a nonprofit organization called the Born This Way Foundation, which seeks to support the mental health of young people and work with them to create a kinder, braver world. Maybe if we find some love for the little monsters inside of us, we could make the world a kinder, braver place. And may our story this morning be an inspiration to all. You are loved. It's not always easy to embrace the shining self and the shadow self, but it is worth it. You are loved, every bit. You are loved no matter how you identify or how your body reveals itself to the world. You are loved by that holy presence greater than our understanding. You are loved. How could we not extend this love to others? This love means widening the circle. It means dismantling systems and judgments of oppression. It means equal access and equity and respect. And this love is a celebration of the diversity that this world has been gifted. And maybe you've not experienced this kind of love. Maybe you've not been on the receiving end of unconditional love or even somewhat conditional love. But that doesn't mean that we can start learning right now how to love ourselves more and then love the world. We can be better for ourselves and for each other. Our liberation, our love, our peace is bound up together. So pause up, little monster. Be you. Let love abide within each and every one of us. Extend your love and kindness to all you meet. I love you, Stinky Face. Blessed be.
Abide with me. Fast falls the eventide. The darkness deepens. Still with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, oh, abide with me. Swift to its close, ebbs out life's little day. Earth's joys grow dim, its glories pass away. Change and decay in all around I see. O thou who changes not, abide with me. We need each other every passing hour. Channels of grace and life affirming power. Faithful companions share this path with me.